Right.
Okay, so this afternoon's talk is about Feldenkrais and sleep, and I'm Steve Cheslett Davey, and I'm a physiotherapist. I live in Arnside, if people know where that is. It's kind of in Cumbria, but on the edge of Cumbria on Morecambe Bay, so it's a very beautiful place. I've lived here for only 6 months, but I used to live in the centre of the lakes in Ambleside. So I'm a physiotherapist, and my day job is I work since March. I've been working in paediatrics in the community in Lancaster. Actually not seen many children, unfortunately, but yeah, I'm working kind of remotely in the community, really, in Lancaster area. I've been a physiotherapist since 1994, and about 10 years ago, I came across Feldenkrais, and it kind of has revolutionized my practice and my own development, I suppose. And now I work in a whole variety of different ways using kind of Feldenkrais ideas and theories and all sorts of things. So I don't know if people have heard of Feldenkrais, but it's basically it's awareness through movement. So that's the whole idea of Feldenkrais, isn't it? The idea is that we can increase people's awareness, self-awareness, through the modality or the medium of movement. So everything that we do in Feldenkrais is kind of around movement, and it's kind of interesting way of working for a physiotherapist, in that physiotherapists generally are not very aware people. I'd say they're quite unaware. So in our training as a physiotherapist, we don't really look at ourselves as, we don't look at ourselves. We tend to look at other people and the science and books and things like that, but we never really investigate our own bodies and our own minds, which in Feldenkrais we do like 100% really. So I know Alison's a Alexander teacher, and there's certain relationships to Alexander. So Alexander was a precursor, I suppose, of Feldenkrais. Feldenkrais came later in the timeline, and they're both what they call somatic movement teaching modalities. So somatic being mind body. So we both, Alexander and Feldenkrais, both look at the person holistically, and we look at how people move and how people move habitually and how they can improve their movement. But we do it in slightly different ways, I'd say. Around sleep, I've always had issues with sleep myself. And when I was doing my Feldenkrais training, this would have been like 10 years ago now, I did struggle with sleep at times, especially with stress. So stress-induced insomnia would be kind of quite a common thing with myself. So when I'm under a lot of stress, I was in a very stressful job working in the NHS as a manager. I used to wake up like 2 o'clock, 3 o'clock in the morning and couldn't get back to sleep. I'd be awake for hours, ruminating and worrying. And someone was mentioning anxiety. I would say that I was always an anxious person, always still am quite anxious at times. And there's quite a common theme with people when you talk to them about insomnia, is that people become anxious about not sleeping. And when they become anxious about not sleeping, they can't sleep. So it's like a vicious cycle. I would say I got into that alongside, I had chronic pain at the time as well. And I did find that Feldenkrais really did help with some of these things. It definitely helped with the chronic pain, and my chronic pain went away through Feldenkrais, basically, and working one-to-one with people, with practitioners, and also doing the classes. But I always felt that there was kind of something missing around sleep, and I felt that sleep was it's a really important thing for people's health, and I was struggling with it. And I came across this work by a guy called Michael Krugman, who is a Feldenkrais practitioner. Unfortunately, he died a couple of years ago, but he was living in Hawaii, and he came up with this idea of the sound asleep system, which I got really interested in, and did some work with Michael's sort of his recordings and his writings. And then I found it very effective. It really did help with my sleep. And I ended up doing teacher training with Michael. It would have been like 10 years ago now. I did it alongside my Feldenkrais training. And it was, at that time, it was like an online training. And it was like about 6 months long. And part of it was you went away to, actually the nearest, it calls them seminars. They're like 2 days of sleep practice. So you practice sleeping for 2 days, which is brilliant. And that was in St. Gallen in Switzerland. So I ended up going to St. Gallen and spending 2 days lying on the floor and going in and out of sleep for 2 days, which was fantastic. So in that training, we learnt all sorts of different techniques for helping people sleep and yourself to sleep. And I think I'm only one of, I think there's about 3 sound asleep teachers in the UK, but there's probably several hundred in the world, people who did the training with Michael. So yeah, over the last 10 years, I've on and off taught the sound asleep system, and now I'm teaching online. So now I'm kind of doing a course that's 6 weeks long, and people do it over 6 weeks, once a week for 6 weeks, and they do a class with me, and they get recordings and notes and things, and then they go off and practice, and then they come back, and it's a really good group. And I've had people from all over the world, America, Australia, Lancaster. I've had people from all over the world sort of joining in, which is great. So yeah, I've been doing that for since April really. And I've had like 2 cohorts go through the 6 weeks, which has been great. And I'm actually starting working a little bit with the NHS at the moment. So they've been asking me to work with staff in the NHS. So I think next week I've got a meeting like this, but I think there's going to be maybe up to 200 people from the Morecambe Bay Trust who are going to do a very similar thing to this, but like an hour with me. So I'm kind of doing it as part of my day job. So they're interested. And I did like 2 workshops with staff from my pediatrics group, and I think I had about 20 or 30 people went through it and really enjoyed it and got a lot from it. So a little bit about sound asleep system. It's basically Feldenkrais kind of ideas, and some of the ideas in Feldenkrais of using the autonomic nervous system, so using the opposite to the flight or fight. So in Feldenkrais, a lot of the time we purposefully use that state of the parasympathetic system in order to calm people down, in order to learn. So when you do Feldenkrais lessons, quite a lot of time you'll tend to feel rather quite sleepy. So we had some of the people who did my Feldenkrais training, I think they slept through about 1/3 of the training. So they would come to the class, to the training, and they would lie down on the floor and they would just go to sleep, and then they would wake up sort of an hour later, and you weren't quite sure if they actually learnt anything, but they didn't really move. They generally snored their way through it. So it can have quite a soporific effect, Feldenkrais. And I think I've got a German colleague who's a physiotherapist in Barrow who I talked to about Feldenkrais, and she said, "Oh yes, I did Feldenkrais in Germany, and but I didn't like it. It just put me to sleep." So there's something about Feldenkrais that is quite soporific at times. And I think some of the teachers who teach it they purposefully put on quite a monotonous voice. And the idea is that you drop people into the parasympathetic system. I think it's a bit too effective at times. I think I just fall asleep with some teachers, which isn't actually the point of Feldenkrais. We don't really want to put people to sleep. We want people to be towards sleep, and it's a good place to learn if you go into that place and you move in that place between sleep and wake. It's actually a very good place to learn, and you wake up and you'll have learnt a lot when you wake up the next day. So Michael Krugman noticed that some of the lessons, especially in Feldenkrais, were very, very effective at putting people to sleep, and especially movements with the hands and the fingers. And there's one lesson called the bell hand, which is where you do these very small movements with the fingers, and you do them in rhythm with the breath. And he found that that was very effective in putting people to sleep. So he took some of these areas of Feldenkrais and then took other areas of yoga and Eastern practice or meditation, and he combined them into his own system. And then he investigated some areas of science of sleep and the nervous system. And then, so he kind of like looked at the back end of it as well. So he looked at the idea that how we concentrate more on the out breath than the in breath can be soporific. It can be increase the parasympathetic system. So he looked at that. He also looked at things like pauses between breaths as well. So if there's a pause between the in breath and the out breath, that can be effective as well. So he incorporates all these different things and came up with a system. So in the sound asleep system, it's like a 24-hour process. So he looks at it, or we look at it more, it's what you do in your 24 hours. And we do these things called day tamers during the day. So a day tamer, and we'll do a day tamer in a minute, but it's a micro movement really. And it works on like a feedback system. Most of them work on a feedback system. And the idea is that we do these micro movements that are linked to the breath that basically calm our nervous system. So we're looking at calming our nervous system, and hopefully what we're aiming to do is to decrease stress hormones in our system. So people know, I think a lot of people are aware here of the autonomic nervous system, and that if we're under stress a lot on a 24-hour basis, our stress hormones, things like cortisol, increase in our blood supply, and that is a really bad thing for sleep. So if we're chronically stressed and we have got a lot of cortisol in our system, we find it very difficult to get to sleep, or if we wake up in the middle of the night to get back to sleep, it's really difficult. So in the sound asleep system, we try and drop the levels of cortisol in the system by doing sort of regular practice of these day tamers. There's a thing called guided natural breathing that we do before we go to bed. It's like, if Jennifer could mute herself, that'd be great. It's just I'm getting a lot of feedback from you. If you could mute yourself, Jennifer.
I'm only on my phone now.
All right, okay, that's fine. Okay. Oh, you're muted. Cool. Okay, so I was just saying about there's this practice that we do before sleep to get us towards the place of sleep that we call guided natural breathing. So it's concentrating on the breath and the movements of the breath. So that is a very, if we become more aware of our breathing and we put our attention on our breathing, that in itself can be quite soporific. And then the third part is where we do these things called night tamers, which are very, very similar to day tamers, but they're these micro movements linked to the breath. And we do those to get ourselves back to sleep. And they're these techniques, and there's probably about 10 different day tamers and 10 different night tamers. And basically we teach them because people sleep in different positions and sleep. So we need something that will suit different people. So we're actually going to do a day tamer, and you can actually adapt this for a night tamer. So you're all sat there, which is great, and find yourself a comfortable position with your feet flat on the floor, and have your right hand out in front of you. So if you could put your right hand out in front of you and put your left thumb into the middle of your palm and support your right hand with your left hand. So you've got your hands in that sort of position. So I don't know if you can see me. Yeah. And then rest them on your lap. So you might want to get a pillow or something just to support your hands. But if you need to, get a pillow and rest your hands in that position on the pillow. So get yourselves organised. Yeah, so your left thumb is in the center of your right palm, and you've just got your hands relaxed in your lap, and close your eyes. And just breathe naturally. So don't make any effort to breathe in any particular way. Take all the time you need for each breath. Don't hurry the breath, just let your breathing be light, easy, and soft. And bring your attention to that place in the center of your palm where your thumb is nestled. And this area, this connection with the thumb and the palm, we call the depth. So this lesson is called the depth. So it's a very sensitive place in the center of your palm. And the pad of your thumb is an incredibly sensitive place as well. So it's almost like the center or the depth of our sensitivity. And feel that connection, feel any sensations or pulsation or warmth there in the center of your palm. As you breathe in, breathe out. Again, making no attempt to breathe in any particular way. The next time you breathe out, very, very gently press with your thumb into your palm. And then as you breathe in again, totally relax your thumb. So for however long it takes you to breathe out, that's how long it takes you to very gently and very slowly press into the center of your palm. And then as you breathe in again, just take that pressure off. And to get some idea of the amount of pressure that you use, just use enough pressure that you can feel that you're pressing and no more. So modulate that pressure so you can just about feel it. So just do that for one more breath cycle and then stop, rest, and feel. Again, bring your attention to the feeling there in the center of your palm where your thumb connects. So the rest period is the period that follows what we call the activation period. So the pressing is the activation period. The rest period should be much longer than the activation period. So just sit with it and feel the effects of what you've done. Has that feeling changed in the center of your palm and your thumb since the start of the lesson? Be curious. If at any time
seem to have lost Stephen.
I've lost him too.
Yeah, I've lost him too. Is this part of the show? He leaves us drifting off. It was good. It was good. Do you want to phone him on his mobile, Debs? Because he might have mobile reception. Some of you looked as if you were asleep then.
I was nicely away.
Yeah, Friday afternoon is a good time to do this.
Did he only think it was half an hour?
Yeah.